All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I am your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Remember, if you are a candidate running for office and you would like an opportunity to be on the show, head on over to candidates.libertydad.com and get yourself booked. The link is in the show notes. Available times are Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 8 a.m., Wednesday and Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Sorry about that. So used to saying 7:30, little slight of the tongue there. All times are Eastern. Tomorrow, join me at 8 a.m. With Bill Reside running for U.S. House out of South Carolina. That should be a good show. Remember, this is like, I've got just like a week and a half now. Week and a half of podcasting, streaming. And then after that, I'm flying out to Indonesia. So I won't be here. I'm going to try to get the, 2 more candidates lined up for next week. We will see if that happens. But if not, we'll get them when I come back. So just letting you know, on the 7th, I'm gone. Flying out. All right. I saw this post and I saved it as a potential bill review. And it's very interesting because this bill review was unlike any others that I have done. When I first read it, and I'm going to read you the post. I'll put it up on the screen here in a moment. When I first read it, I read this post and I was like, oh, this will be a bill that I probably will oppose. Even though the underlying concept, I don't oppose. And it's not because I'm a libertine, as a lot of people like to incorrectly say. It's not because I don't care about the children. Everybody's always like, what about the children? Right? What about a good argument? I don't know. It's not because I have a tendency to oppose government. It's because I routinely read bills that are garbage. They're just flawed. So let's back up a little bit and let's see what this particular let's see what they had to say. So I don't know this account. I've not seen it before, but it just kind of came across my feed and I checked it out and I was like, oh, okay, this seems like a bill that I should review. So here we go. All right. So it's, I don't know. Again, I don't know who hostis, I'm not sure how you say it is, but here's what they said. On May 13th, 2026, the Missouri House of Representatives passed a bill requiring every pornography website in the world to require anyone accessing it from Missouri upload a government issue ID. It imposes fines of $10,000 per day per violation. The Senate passed it the day before. The Missouri Attorney General will enforce it. They go on. Here we go. How about that? They go on and say, did I get that right? Yeah. The sponsor of the bill, Representative Sherry Gallick, made the case on the House floor by comparing the audience to vermin. Her exact quote, "When there's a leak in your house, you turn the water off. When there's pests that come into your house, an exterminator comes in and cuts off the source. This is the source. Children do not need to view pornography. The audience is the pest." Okay, this is where I kind of disagree with them. I think she's actually talking about the porn being the pest. Like, look, we can oppose things. We can have our morals. We should also speak in truth. Just pointing that out. Goes on and says, the state is the exterminator. The law is the trap. The trap will not catch anything. The audience already left. Pornhub pulled out of Missouri in December 2025 after the state attorney general's rule went into effect. So did every other major adult site that did not want to host a database of Missouri's driver's licenses. The traffic did not disappear. It simply routed around the law within hours. VPN signups in Florida surged 1,150% in the first 4 hours after their law went live. Utah saw 967%, Oklahoma 1,060%, Alabama 542%. So I guess here in Florida, we must really like our porn because we passed similar legislation. Every single state that has passed one of these laws has produced the same chart. The law goes into effect, the legitimate sites geo-block, the audience installs a VPN, the traffic redirects to a server in a state without the law. All right. It's a long post, by the way. Representative Eric Woods said this out loud on the House floor in March before the vote. Kids are smart. There are VPNs. There are browser settings that allow you to skirt around some of this stuff. The bill passed anyway, 112 to 25, 32 to 0 in the Senate. It's all true. He did say that. I listened to the video. I listened to the audio. I watched the video. The point was never to stop the audience. The point was to build the infrastructure. All right. And then it goes on and says, a bill to protect children becomes a registry of adults. A registry of adults becomes a database of preferences. A database of preferences becomes a list of dissidents. The list of dissidents is the thing the state was building from the beginning. 25 states now have laws requiring an ID upload to access content the Supreme Court declared protected speech less than a decade ago. The same infrastructure is being expanded by the same legislators in the same sessions to cover social media accounts, AI chatbots, search engines, and in California, the operating system of the device you bought. A lot of truth there. There's some things that are a little bit off, but we'll discuss it here. Missouri's next bill, currently in committee, would require parental consent for any social media account for anyone aged 14 to 16 and ban accounts entirely for anyone under 14. The bill after that will cover something else. The bill after that will cover something else. Yeah, I don't really disagree here. I didn't look into this particular bill, but here's the thing. We must evaluate bills on the basis of, is this particular bill solving a problem and is it written well? Is it a good bill? I don't evaluate bills on what might be the next bill. That's not, because if we do that, then the reverse is true. Somebody could say, well, you may not like the bill that's coming after it, but I like a bill that's coming after it. And so therefore I'm going to support this bill because I like what comes after, right? So if you can oppose a bill because you dislike something coming after, you can support a bill because you like something that's coming after. right? And that's not the way that we should be evaluating bills. It goes on and says, the state of Missouri has spent 2 legislative sessions building a regime to identify an audience that has a direct, is that what it says? That has, as a direct response to the regime, made itself unidentifiable. And then the last post here, the last part of the comment. The state of Missouri just passed a law to identify you. The next state will be the one you live in. The state after that will be the federal government. The state after that will not call itself a state anymore. Okay, so a little bit of, I'm just going to be honest, okay? And I know people are not going to like this. Not like my libertarian crowd, my libertarian peers may not like this. There's a bit of alarmism in there. I'm not going to try to address everything, but there was definitely some alarmism. But there was also some reality. Okay? So it's not the case that all of this is necessarily going to come true, but there's a good chance. All right? There's a good chance, and this is why people have to be vigilant. All right? Now, going back to, me, when I first read that, I was like, yep, going to oppose it. I kind of taken, I assumed that everything in there was true. And why is that? It's because I've routinely read bills that are garbage. Not a little flawed, absolute garbage. But as I dug in, I found this bill was a lot more thorough than I was expecting. I still have some problems with the bill, but resolving them doesn't affect the core purpose. And before we dive in, what I want to do is I want to play this video because I want to set the backdrop for my skepticism and every libertarian's skepticism. In 2018, Mark Zuckerberg was dragged before, maybe not dragged, but he was before the Senate, and he was testifying about WhatsApp and, some of their, how Meta does their business. And I want to play this montage. And I think this montage does a really good job of highlighting what a libertarian concern is. So let's play it real quick.
Well, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
Now, I don't know if you saw that, but the woman behind him in green, she's wearing a green blouse, she kind of smiled and chuckled because he's like, well, how do you make money if, and he's like, we run ads. Like, this is, like, you should know this by now. Ads bring money on the internet and pretty much everywhere else in the world. But I just thought it was funny because, like, you see Zuckerberg kind of smiling. He's like, what a dumb question. As the woman behind him seems to be thinking the same thing.
If I'm emailing within WhatsApp, does that ever inform your advertisers?
No, we don't see any of the content in WhatsApp. It's fully encrypted.
Right, but is there some algorithm that spits out some information to your ad platform? And then, let's say I'm emailing about Black Panther within WhatsApp. Do I get a Black Panther banner ad?
Senator, Facebook systems do not see the content of messages being transferred over WhatsApp.
Yeah, I know, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about whether these systems talk to each other without a human being touching it.
Senator, I think the answer to your specific question is if you message someone about Black Panther on WhatsApp, it would not inform any ads.
Okay.
There have been reports that Facebook can track a user's internet browsing activity even after that user has logged off of the Facebook platform. Can you confirm whether or not this is true?
Senator, I want to make sure I get this accurate, so it would probably be better to have my team follow up.
So you don't know?
I know that people use cookies on the internet, and that you can probably correlate activity between sessions. We do that for a number of reasons, including security and including measuring ads to make sure that the ad experiences are the most effective, which, of course, people can opt out of.
Well, Facebook offered to all of its users a blanket opt-in to share their privacy data with any third-party users.
Congresswoman, yes, that's how our platform works. You have to opt in to sign into any app before you use it.
Like, you didn't even know the functionality. Like, that's crazy. Right. Like, and a lot of these people, now this is Congress. Okay. And I will make my point what Congress has to do with the state legislation, legislative body here in just a moment. Okay. I will make that point. It will become clear, but I wanted to remind you of this. And look, I am not saying that Meta or X or any social media platform is completely on your side and they love freedom and they cherish, the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech. I'm not saying that. Okay. We're talking about legislative bodies at this particular moment.
Could somebody call you up and say, I want to see John Kennedy's file?
Absolutely not.
Could you, would you do it? Could you do it?
In theory.
Do you have the right to put my data, a name on my data, and share it with somebody?
I do not believe we have the right to do that.
Do you have the ability?
Senator, the data is in the system,
Do
so
you have the ability?
technically I think someone could do that, but that would be a massive breach. So we would never do that.
It would be a breach.
What's the point of playing that video? I want to remind my audience that a lot of the people that are out there making these laws are drafting legislation. They're voting on legislation. They're arguing in favor of legislation about things that they don't know. And it's true in Congress. It's true in your state body, right? Your state legislative body. A lot of times they don't know what they're talking about. And they're passing rules, enforceable rules that could throw you in jail or offer you a big fine, right? Like these are not trivial matters. These are punishable things that can deprive you of your rights. And they are voting on things and supporting things that they don't understand. And that was the whole point of that video. Now, I don't have a montage of the Missouri state legislative body doing the same thing. I do have a video coming up here in a few moments, and I'll show you when we get to the part where I talk about some of my concerns. But if you go and you pay attention to your city council, to your state legislative body, to your Congress, you will find they very frequently are voting on things that they don't really understand. And they will make some very strong cases, not necessarily logically speaking, but they will make some passionate cases in favor of regulation, in favor of banning things. And then when you dig down, they don't even know. Like the one gentleman asked him like 3 times. He's like, okay, but like if I type in Black Panther, am I going to get an ad? And he's like, system doesn't see that. Doesn't matter. Like if Mark Zuckerberg is lying, that's a different story. But the fact is, the legislator did not understand how the system worked. He did not understand what it means to be encrypted. And then the other guy at the very end there, he's like, whoa. Like if you paid close attention to the wording that he used, it was clear that he didn't really understand even his own questions. He's like, well, could somebody call you up and ask to see my file? And Zuckerberg's like, what? No, like that doesn't happen. Like now, there is, because, Mark Zuckerberg pointed out, he says, because this information is there, yes, there is technically this could happen. The real question is, what safeguards do we have that prevent it from happening? Safeguards internally, safeguards maybe from the government that says you cannot do that. So think of HIPAA for a second, right? My information, like let's say you work at an insurance company and you have access to my data, maybe you're an engineer or something or whatever, right? And you have access. There are several things. There's going to be safeguards internally with the company that are supposed to prevent people from having access that don't need access. If you're a call center person for an insurance company, you don't need access necessarily to my information, right? Depends on what it is. Like maybe you're just a call center to help explain how the benefits work, right? Maybe I have to go to like tier 2 or something like that to get to somebody that has the required access to my file, if you will, right? But that person may only have read access. They may only be able to access it and see what it is. They may not have access to make any changes whatsoever. That may be yet another person. Then you also have laws, regulations, things that are enforceable, so that if I were to find out that you mishandled my information, I can now file a grievance against you with my government. And so this last gentleman seemed to not understand all of that. And he's like, well, because he's mixing up his questions. He's like, well, could you do this? Can it be done? And it's like, those are different questions. Whether something can be done and whether or not we've put in safeguards to prevent it or to minimize the risk. You're never really going to prevent it entirely, right? Those are two separate things. And he didn't seem to understand that. So I think it's worthwhile just to point out that your legislators, a lot of times they don't know what the hell they're talking about. All right. So now let's take a look at some of what's in the bill. Now, what's cool about this bill, it's only 4 pages. Like, okay, well, that's cool. And it's 4 pages where it's adding stuff to existing statute. So let's take a look. And we're going to go over here. Boom. There we are. All right. So what I did is I'm not putting up the whole bill on the screen. I'm going to try to get away from that because I just think that's a little bit boring for the morning. So here are the relevant parts to you. Okay. And this is exactly what it says. Okay. A commercial entity that knowingly and intentionally publishes and distributes material on an internet website, including a social media platform, more than 1/3 of which is sexual material harmful to minors, shall use reasonable age verification methods to verify that an individual attempting to access the material is 18 years of age or older. Now, in this particular block of text, the phrase sexual material harmful to minors, that's defined, and it goes through, and it's pretty graphic, so we're going to leave that one alone. All right, but you can go and read it for yourself. It also defines age verification, what that means. Basically, it limits it. Well, I think it goes into the next one here. Let's just go to the next one. Because I think I have that. Did I have that? Yes. Okay, we'll get to that. All right. So a commercial entity that performs the age verification, or a third party that performs the age verification under this section, shall not retain any identifying information of the individual. Okay. So now, if there's remember the I think it's a senator. Remember his concern. He was like, well, can people just call up and say, I want to see DL's file? Okay. Or in that case, he said, his file. And, but we'll just make it about me, my show. Right. So what the law here is saying is DL is not supposed to, there's not supposed to be a file about DL, because it says shall not retain any identifying information of the individual. So if I go through the age verification process in Missouri to go to an adult site, they're legally not permitted to retain any identifying information. Not permitted. And by the way, I don't know if you caught it. I kind of missed it back here. It said more than 1/3 of which is sexual material. So they're basically allowing up to 1/3 of the content. I don't know how they plan on measuring it, but up to 1/3 of the content on a website can be sexual in nature of any kind before it triggers a requirement for age verification. Okay, we'll talk about that in a bit. I just want to point that out because I think I forgot it. All right, so now we know that they're not allowed to retain your information. Let me go on. We say a commercial entity required to use reasonable age verification methods under this section shall display the following notices on its website. Oh, I think I did skip it. That's okay. Display the following notices on its website and all advertisements for the website in which sexual material harmful to minors is published or distributed in a 14-point font or larger. All right. So now they're saying, okay, if you're one of these sites, more than 1/3, okay, if you're required to use age verification, you also have to post this on your website. So here we go. This is the text, the exact text that they want on the website. Pornography is potentially biologically addictive. Okay, so we're going to start out. I'm going to say, I'm not a big fan of legislating on what is potential. Okay, either something is or it is not, and we have a law, and we can just, I'm not a big fan of that. But we'll talk about this. Going on, it is proven to harm human brain development, desensitizes brain reward circuits, increases conditioned responses, and weakens brain function. Exposure to this content is associated with low self-esteem and body image, eating disorders, impaired brain development, and other emotional and mental illnesses. Now, this one's kind of weird because, typically we associate porn with men. I don't really know too many men that have an eating disorder or a body image disorder because of porn. You could argue perhaps women, but that's always been the case because you got your Victoria's Secrets runway, where the tall, slender women are walking down the catwalk. Those we've long associated that with poor body image of women, and I think that's a broader conversation that largely deals with fathers. But we're not going to get into that right now. Okay, so some of this is a little bit off. I'm a little skeptical of it. Pornography increases the demand for prostitution, child exploitation, and child pornography. I'm not sure about that, right? Prostitution is the oldest profession in the world. It's been around since biblical times. They've literally documented it, okay? And so, there wasn't porn then. You didn't have pornography. You had to go see it in person. I mean, I guess maybe somebody could take a stone tablet and chisel out, a naked woman, or maybe take some berries and make some ink and put them on a cave wall of sexual stuff. Maybe that was their version of pornography, but color me skeptical on that. Child exploitation and child pornography. Again, I think these are things that have existed and don't really rely on pornography. And when we say increases, how much? It's like when somebody says, "Oh," they'll try to use statistics and they'll say, "Well, this increases it by 50%." Okay, this increases your risk by 50%. And you go, "Okay, well, what's the risk to begin with?" Because if my risk was 0.01%, great. Now it's 0.015%, right? So increasing it 50%. Saying it that way makes it sound like it's far worse, but in reality, the risk is still pretty low. In this particular case, the question is, okay, when I say it increases the demand, how much are we talking about? Is that increase negligible or is it significant? I kind of fall on the probably negligible, just because all of these things existed long before Hustler and Playboy and and other media forms that we've had. These have always existed. So I'm not, it's like, are people watching adult women and then saying, you know what, I would prefer a child? I don't know. I haven't really dug into that information, but just off the cuff, I'm a little skeptical. All right. So then it goes on and it says, they also want this on the website, and they put it all in all caps. That's why I left it there. So presumably they want this in all caps. U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. This helpline is a free confidential information service in English or in Spanish, open 24 hours per day for individuals and family members facing mental health or substance abuse disorders. The service provides referral to local treatment facilities, support groups, and community-based organizations. I'm really unclear who they think they're reaching here. Because if you're going to a website to look at nudie movies or images and pleasure yourself, is this really, are you really going to look at that and be like, you know what, I better call the helpline? So, I'm a little bit skeptical of that. Now, here's the thing. Those are what I would call severable. You could remove them and the core function of the bill remains. Because what is the core function of what problem are they trying to solve? They're trying to solve the problem of children having too easy access to pornography websites. That's the problem. And so they're like, look, we're going to implement this legislation We're going to pass it that says you have to implement age verification. Now, I'm going to pull it up. I'm not going to show it up on the screen just because I guess I forgot to add it to my clips there. But I'm going to read to you what they call. I'm going to read to you the age verification section. Okay, so that way you have an understanding of what they mean by age verification. So let's see here. Where are we? I'm scrolling through it really quickly. I will get to it. Where did it go? Okay, so age verification, they define it. A method by which a commercial entity verifies the age of an individual by requiring the individual to A, provide digital identification, or B, comply with a commercial age verification system that verifies age using a government-issued identification or a commercially reasonable method that relies on public or private transactional data to verify the age of an individual. That's a bit vague, but that sounds to me like I've seen things suggest that like they could take a phone number and they can use the phone number to identify whether you're an adult because they can associate it with transactions and say, okay, these transactions were made by somebody that was likely an adult. Okay, that's one direction. But ultimately, again, they're not permitted to keep this information. So that's good. So there's not going to be like this data breach. Like we just saw that with OnlyFans, I think yesterday or the day before, there was a breach for OnlyFans and all this information went out, like all these users. By the way, you're more than welcome to go search it. You will not find my name. You will not find my email address. Okay. So good to go there. So age verification, and there are a variety of different verification methods. Like there's some where they use like facial recognition. And I think I've even seen one where like they do like hand motions. And apparently when you get older, your hand motions aren't as crisp or something like that. And so they can distinguish like with what degree of accuracy, I don't know, but they can distinguish between a youth and an adult in some way, so they're coming up with all these kind of like really neat and clever ways. And you can engage in that if you want. Now, here's the thing. For me, I look at it and I say, okay, are you solving a real problem? The answer is yes, you are. It is a real problem. And I think for people like me, libertarians who generally oppose government, we have to be honest and say, yes, this is not oh my God, think of the children. And people are just exaggerating and trying to use children as a fulcrum to lift up their, poor argument. That's not what's going on. What's going on is there is a legitimate issue here. Children should not be watching pornography, period. And in the most ideal world, parents will deal with that. And parents will have all the resources that they need. And I've talked about this a lot because I've said, look, like I personally use Family Link on the tablet that my son uses. And it's locked the hell down. And I go and I check the history on a regular basis. I sneak up on him and I'm like, what are you watching? And he turns it around immediately and he shows me what he's watching. I make sure that, if he's on YouTube, he's watching what he says he is, which is always Minecraft. Always Minecraft stuff. So I am very diligent. Is it possible that that something could get by me? Yes, that is always the case. There is no situation ever where a parent is fully 100% going to be able to monitor their child. And there is no situation anywhere where a government can implement any kind of regulation that will fill in those gaps 100%. What am I saying? Hopefully you understood that. All I'm saying is your child will always have some avenue to get around any controls of some kind. Maybe not every control, but controls. That's what children do. If you think of a baby, I used to say that babies are natural pen testers, like penetration testers. Those are people that go and they try to find the flaws in a system. Like if you've baby-proofed your house ever, and then you put your little baby on the floor and they crawl, they find the one thing that you missed. You could spend like 4 hours baby-proofing an entire room, and they'll be like, forgot something, in like 30 seconds. Like they're just magnets to the error that you made. It's just crazy. Right? And as they get older, they get more clever. They find ways of getting around the rules and the regulations and whatever mom and dad have put into place. That's what they do. This is a constant battle. So I am very much in support of the idea that parents, your job is to manage your children. That is your responsibility. On the other hand, when I look at bills like this, I'm like, okay, number one, are you solving a real problem? Yes, there is a real problem. Kids can get on the internet and it's super, super easy to go and find porn. You practically trip over it. Okay. I've been doing research sometimes for the show on like social media, particularly X, and I'll go to the search and I'll type in something like the wrong set of keywords. And then like what it'll pop up is it's like, it's almost like I just said, give me all the porn you could find. All right. And I'm like, okay, well, that was a bad set of keywords, right? Like you basically trip over it, you know, when you're searching on the internet. So with that in mind, I do think that it's not unreasonable for a community to say, we want to give parents a little bit of an assist, okay? And in this particular case, they could say our community standards are children should not have easy access to porn. In the same way that once upon a time, when I was like, say, a 16-year-old kid, and I went into the gas station, and then behind the counter, they had all the hustlers and the playboys and whatever else, right? Some of them were in bags, so you couldn't view them until you bought them. Some of them were not. Well, they were behind the counter for a reason, to limit the accessibility to me. Then I would have to show ID to make sure that I could buy one, right? So like if I was in, I was like, yeah, I'm totally 18, bro, or 21 or however old you had to be, right? They might say, give me your ID. Same thing with cigarettes, right? Those are behind the counter. I don't have a problem with some rules to kind of give people an assist. The problem that I have with a lot of this legislation is, number one, it sometimes is bloated. And sometimes it just won't solve the problem at all. It won't even address it. And then, so in that particular case, I'm like, well, okay, might as well not have a bill. If a bill is going to do virtually nothing, might as well not have it. Now, if a bill is going to do something, then it becomes a question of, okay, how much of an impact is it having on those who ought to legally have access? Adults should legally be permitted to access pornography. And what they did with this legislation, because if you go and you watch the hearings and you listen to the sponsor of the bill, Representative Gallick, she says they mirrored this bill after a Texas bill that ended up in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, this Texas bill does not put undue restraint limitations on individuals who are of age that should absolutely be able to access this material. And I skimmed over the Supreme Court. I'm not going to talk about it on the show, but I skimmed over it. I kind of get a gist of what they were saying. Okay. And part of it was like including 1/3, you know, so there was like this bar that said, okay, if more than 1/3 of your content is basically porn, and they don't really distinguish between soft and hardcore porn. They just kind of lump it all together. So if you go and even read this bill, you'll see that some elements of what they call harmful to minors would constitute softcore porn. Some of it would constitute hardcore porn. So they just kind of lump it all together. Okay, fine. I don't have a problem with those kind of things. Just to say, hey, look, we're going to put a barrier so that you can't easily access it. Does that prevent it? No, because back in the day, what did I need to do to get around the rules, to get around the counter, to get around the lack of ID? If you had a friend who had an older brother, as one of my friends did, that was willing just to be like, yeah, you guys can look at some nudie magazines, then you could easily access it. Or for many of us who went out, we would, we weren't 21, but we would find somebody who was 21 that was willing to go and buy alcohol for us. Now, were those things illegal? Yes, they were. Would some people do that? Yes, they did. But it still limited access because, one, you had to find somebody that was willing to do that. In many cases, some people weren't willing to do that. And so your options became limited. Sometimes you didn't have a friend with an older brother that would be like, all right, yeah, you go look at this nudie magazine, you'll be fine. Right? You didn't always have that. So for me, I look at this bill and I'm like, oh, and it doesn't hit my normal objections. My normal objections would be, number one, it's a state level bill, not federal. If this had been a federal, we wouldn't be having this conversation because I would say it's not appropriate for the federal level, period. End of story. For me, federal government should be tiny, 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 right? And a lot of things should be in the state. There's a lot of things the federal government is doing right now that I would say, number one, maybe the government shouldn't be doing at all. And number two, if there's any argument that government should be doing it, it should be at the state level and in some cases lower than that. So that objection, this bill takes care of it. Another objection is that it prohibits any entity verifying age from storing any identifying information. That's a big concern to me. I don't want the government to have any access to a database of its citizens. I think there's too many cases in history where the government has demonstrated that they are not fit to handle that kind of information, period. They always abuse it at some point. And so for me, I'm like, you shouldn't have it. Well, this bill says you're not allowed to store it. So if you're not allowed to store it, then the government can't ask for it. Number two, it's applicable to only sites where porn is more than 1/3 of the content. So now we can argue whether it should be 1/3, 1/4, 1/2, whatever. But they seem to allow some flexibility. And why would I think it? Because again, some people might say, there's a provision in the bill that kind of points out like, hey, if it doesn't meet some sort of artistic value. And some people would say, hey, this is art. Yes, it's showing a nipple, but it's art. And so we want to make sure that we're not being too restrictive. So it's not like any sites that have it at all. It's like, look, more than 1/3 of your material has to be this kind of content. Okay. And we could debate how much it should be. And so that objection is out the window. My last objection is that it permits the use of government ID or other forms of age verification. So it's not limited to if you're like, hey, I'm an adult, I want to see this stuff, but I don't want to give up my government ID. I don't want to hand over that information to anybody. I don't even want you to see it, even if you're not storing it. Well, they've made a provision that other forms of age verification are acceptable. And what that means is if a porn site starts out and says, oh, we're only going to use government ID, and all of its users say, to heck with that, we're not giving you that information, what's going to happen? Their viewership is going to go down. And so they're going to say, all right, we're going to have to find some other form of age verification. All right. So those things, then you've got the severable parts. So the parts that I actually disagree with, and I'll put them back up on the screen again, just so that you can see them. Let me see where they go here. All right, so we go here. So these parts where they want the websites to have text on the website, I think that's just silly. I think that's about as effective as when they, put things on cigarette cartons and they were like, cigarette smoke is known to cause cancer, blah, 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 whatever. I don't think people cared. I think most people, there was a certain point where people were quite aware of that and they smoked anyway. So I don't think that's really all that effective. And I'm not a big fan of government saying, you have to say this. I don't like imposed speech. Not a fan of it. But so I can object to this part, but it's severable. You remove it, the core purpose of this bill remains. All right. And then the same thing here with this weird, if you need help, reach out, we got you. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be watching porn and be like, you know what, I need help, I'm going to go. I just don't see it. I mean, when I say anyone, I mean like very few people. Right? I'm not speaking in absolute 100%. Nobody ever will. Sure, somebody might. But the number of people that are going to do it is so few that I don't think that there's any situation where you could justify it. Even if you love government, I don't think you can justify it. I think it's just silly. So I don't think we should be doing it. All right, let's see what else we got here. Oh, okay. So there are some concerns though. Number one, how effective will this bill be? Well, it won't be ineffective. So the question is, how effective will it be? And if, like if you've got people signing up for VPN, how many of those people are actually children? Probably not too many. I'm making a guess. I don't know. Okay. But for me, I look at this and I say, it does create a reasonable barrier. In the same way that putting nudie magazines behind the counter and requiring an ID created a reasonable barrier. It is not a complete barrier, It will not resolve the problem 100%, perhaps not even 80%, maybe only 40%. I don't know. But 40% is a lot. And when we consider the question, should children, is it okay? Let's consider the question like this. Is it acceptable for a society to decide they do not want children to have access to certain kinds of things? Yes, I think it is absolutely acceptable. I don't want our children accessing porn. I don't want our children smoking cigarettes. I don't want our children drinking alcohol. And so if we can put reasonable barriers that don't create major obstacles for adults who should have access if they so choose, then I'm okay with that, provided that it goes no higher than the state level. Now, in this particular case, I think the state level, it would be the appropriate place for it. It wouldn't really make sense for counties. Florida has 67 counties. Imagine trying to figure out, your systems for 67 counties that may have different rules. 50 is tough enough. But at the same time, we can see that this legislation is following Texas legislation. So now you have two states which are doing basically the same thing. So whichever porn sites want to send stuff to Missouri or send stuff to Texas, they can basically they can operate with the same laws. So now, in the strictest sense, my anarchist peers, my really tough libertarians, they might say, hey, you're still imposing a cost on a business. Yes, you are. That is the world we live in. And I have never denied the idea that government might have a role in society. I just want it to be a very tiny role. And I want to make sure that whatever role they play makes sense. That's really where I am. Now, I'm going to play another video for you. And because we talked about the efficacy, the biggest concern that we have, even still with this bill, even if we remove the parts that I don't like and we tighten it up just a wee bit, okay? The still big problem is that this could expand to other things. You might say, well, DL, that's you're making a slippery slope argument. Yes and no. Okay, slippery slope fallacy is when you start saying, well, this might lead to this, might lead to this, might lead to this, and then you just kind of create these hypotheticals. But when people are saying it, that's a different story. When people are like, I can't wait for this legislation because I would like to expand it to other things, well, then it's no longer a slippery slope. Now you're actually fighting an idea. So I want to play this clip from a woman. I believe she is a representative. It's not clear to me. This is from March 3rd when the House was in session in Missouri, their state house, and a woman gets up to support this bill. And I want to play this for you. Now, before I play it, let me kind of give you my perception. If this is a regular citizen speaking just as a citizen in support of the bill, I have a lot of flexibility for the arguments being made. If this is a legislator, we should laugh them out of office. Okay? Because citizens, we can come up with dumb arguments all the day, all the time. I don't expect them to have the best, strongest argument. I expect our legislators to have the strongest argument because they're the ones that are voting on this stuff. They're the ones that are drafting it. They're the ones that are arguing and making changes to potential legislation. So therefore, they need to be better than the rest of us. And we should be expecting that. So let me play this video and you'll see right away why there's a concern remaining with this legislation. Here we go.
Lady from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to speak on the bill.
Proceed, lady.
Mr. Speaker, members of this body, the lady and I from St. Louis City, we got up and we had a robust conversation about what websites are actually harmful to our scholars when we talk about adult websites. We went into depth about how gun violence is imperative and it is happening in our communities left and right.
Okay, let's just stop right now. She's talking about gun violence. Now, you might think, DL, you pulled this clip out of context. If you go watch the March 3rd video, you will see that this entire conversation is underneath the umbrella of House Bill 1839, which is the age verification bill. And she starts off talking about like, hey, gun violence. What? What does gun violence have to do with porn? She ties it in, sort of.
And yet again, I was not able to offer the amendment to make ammunition the same as gun laws. And again, it's falling on deaf ears in a chamber full of people.
Okay. So this is why I believe that she's not a regular citizen, because she said, I was not able to offer an amendment. Regular citizens, to my knowledge, cannot come into the Missouri State House or any state house and just offer amendments. That has to be somebody who's a member of the body, an elected member of the body. So I think she's a legislator, and she's talking about a bill that is entirely about pornography and age verification, and she's inserting this conversation about gun violence. Let's continue.
We talk about age verification. You want these people to upload their IDs, but you don't even require them to show their IDs when they're trying to buy ammunition in your cities and in your counties. You don't even require them to have a database to make sure that the kids are how old they say they are.
Okay. So this woman supports age verification requirements for ammunition and firearms. She also supports a database, okay, which this bill strictly prohibits.
Just like this age verification, you could take somebody's ID, put them in a database, and have your enemies be sworn to this new list of creepy people. Mr. Speaker, I just find it that I agree with the lady. I just think that we should do this across the board for all of adult websites that are harmful to students and our scholars and children in this state.
Okay. Just so it's clear, what she is saying is this should be all adult websites. She's not limiting this to just pornography websites. That's already been addressed. The bill already identifies and says, if this is a pornography website under these criteria, more than 1/3, and with the list of things, and we're not, again, I'm not going to read it to you because it's a little on the graphic side. Then it's pornography. It requires age verification. So she's not identifying like other adult sites in the context of sexuality. She's talking about adult websites of things that she believes children should not have access to, including firearms and ammunition. That's what I'm not saying, oh no, somebody might expand it to include something else. A legislator already is. And they haven't even, at this point, they haven't even passed the bill. And the bill has not been voted on. It's not been passed and sent to the governor for signing. None of that has happened. And she's already talking about expanding it. That is a huge problem.
Let's not just limit it to age verification on adult websites and specify of porn, and not try to do our very best to end sex trafficking. There are a multitude of things that we should be doing instead of just saying upload your ID to watch porn. It's weird. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's weird. I like how she was like creepy people and weird. Like, okay. I mean, she can have an opinion. That's fine. Like, it's just kind of weird because she's like, you got all these creepy people in this database, but I'm okay with having the database of the creepy people. I want to know who the creepy people are. Right? I mean, she didn't say all that. I'm kind of inferring from the conversation that she had here. But this is a real problem. And so, but again, I don't look at it and I don't say, well, because somebody might abuse a law, because somebody might come later and try to make abusive additions, that's no reason to not support a bill that might be useful. So I would just say in response to that, people in Missouri and people in other states need to be diligent about what your legislators are doing. And you need to pay attention. And look, I know the argument that a lot of my peers might give me. They might say, but they're going to do it and a lot of people aren't going to be diligent. Okay, I get that. That's why I'm doing the show, to inform people, to help you become more diligent so that you know what to look for. because there is no system of any kind that will operate effectively if the people are not involved. It doesn't matter whether it's the Constitution. It doesn't matter whether it's socialism or communism, although I think there would be some other issues with those particular systems. It won't be anarchy, as my friends who are anarchist. At the end of the day, let's say you get your anarchist society. Let's say America turned to a true anarchist society, not the one that people think of in the media, not where there's lawlessness and people throwing Molotov cocktails wherever they please. That's not what we're talking about. Let's say that you get the anarchist society according to the philosophical view of anarchy as understood by libertarians, where there's no rules, just no rulers, right? Let's say you get that. It will not be effective if the people do not ensure that it is effective. So regardless of what system we have, we must be involved. And we must be diligent. We must pay attention. We must look and say, okay, maybe this bill is satisfactory. Could use some revisions, but it's satisfactory. And maybe it will give a little bit of an assist to parents. We need to do a couple of things. Number one, we need to tell parents, you still have to parent. This was only an assist. It's not doing your job for you. And we're not going to try to do your job for you. All we're doing is setting some community standards. Children who cannot consent do not belong having things that really require a solid level of ability to consent. That's all we can have that community standard. And we can put in some limitations to help ensure that standard. It's not a guarantee. Your child might steal your ID and put it in there on a site. And now they have access to it and create their own little account. You still have to parent. It's not a guarantee. This is just giving you a small assist. That's all it is. And as long as it remains such that it does not infringe upon adults who should have access, then I think it's tolerable. Okay? I'm not a big fan of limiting people from what they should be permitted to do. Okay? But at the same time, I'm not a fool. I recognize that there are some things that we should not let children have access to. And in that sense, it's a balancing act. And I think this particular bill mostly, not entirely, balances it. I think there are some things that need to be removed. Those two phrases that they want to impose upon websites, I think that's kind of silly. I don't think that's going to be effective of any kind. Because again, the bill is about children, okay? And no 14-year-old boy is going to go to a website and see some sort of disclaimer that, he might have body image issues if he continues watching porn and then go, you know what, you're right, I shouldn't watch. That's not how 14-year-old boys think. Like, no 14, like, they just don't. So it's absurd to include this disclaimer that is unlikely to do anything for children in a bill that's driven on the basis of limiting access for children. But it is a balancing act, and we have to balance it out. And I think this bill does it as about as best as you can expect. So in that particular sense, I'm going to kind of tolerate the bill. I'll support it, right? Like, it's not the best, but I think it balances well. So I'm okay with it. I'll give it a pass. I don't have my button handy, so I can't give it the ding, but ding. How about that? All right. That's my show today, folks. I will see you guys tomorrow. Kind of weird not having interviews in the evening, but that's the way it is. Hope you found this informative, inspiring, thought-provoking. If you enjoyed the conversation, do me a solid. I want you to head down to the comments. Let me know what you thought. Maybe I missed something important. Maybe you got a better take. Maybe you just want to give me a little praise for, dissecting this bill and giving you all the information that you need to help build a better world. Whatever the case, every comment helps the show grow, and I genuinely read them all. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I will catch you in the next one. That is tomorrow, when I'm going to have on, Bill Reside for U.S. House out of South Carolina. With that being said, have a great one, folks. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, because, you know, every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing